of the Tur in Siman Tzadiches. A little bit of a word of introduction about what the thing is that you have in front of you. The thing that you have in front of you, Tur, is the Arbiturim, a page from the Arbiturim. Literally, Arbiturim translates to 4 rows. 4 rows of what, from where, from who, from why.
4 roses.
Right, 4 roses, right? What are these 4 rows? What are we talking about here? So, a very short introduction to the world of writings of halacha, and we're gonna say this briefly so that we can get into some of the text here. But historical context is always important before we open something up. The first thing to note is that Moshe Rabbeinu came down from Har Sinai with the Torah, or at least much of the Torah and most of the mitzvahs of the Torah. Exactly at what point in time in the 40 years in the desert all 613 mitzvahs were taught to Moshe Rabbeinu? It's an interesting question, not for now. But by the end of 40 years in the desert, all of the mitzvahs and the text of the Torah as we know it were written down by Moshe Rabbeinu by the last day of his life, given over to the Jewish people. Excellent. That's the written Torah. You cannot understand the written Torah without the oral tradition, because otherwise nothing makes sense at all. I mentioned this in one of the shurim, I think one of the Abarbanel shurim 2 or 3 weeks ago, that somebody told me that they went to visit, I think at some point they went to like Har Grizim and they met the Sumerians or Karaites, or like one of those chevra that like don't believe in the oral Torah, and they have a Kohen Gadol there. They have a Kohen Gadol. What's the Kohen Gadol for the Karaites? Karaite Kohen Gadol is the oldest Kohen. That's how they translate HaKohen HaGadol Me'echav, the Kohen that is greater than his brothers. That's called the Kohen Gadol.
They don't go by size?
Right, so I asked the question, why not the tallest Kohen? Why not the fattest Kohen? Right? Meaning, well, once you have no tradition, right, you're going to translate the word HaKohen HaGadol Me'echav, the Kohen that is larger than his brothers. Why is it about age? Make it about size. Make it about height. Make it about weight. Make it about who's the richest, right? This wouldn't be the first time in Jewish history that people have determined greatness by richness, right? So, I mean, once you have no tradition, so then make up whatever you want. Elamai, no, their tradition is that Kohen Gadol means, right, that became their minhag. So you can't understand anything without Torah Sheba'al Peh. You need Torah Sheba'al Peh. The example that I give to my students all the time is Humpty Dumpty. What's Humpty Dumpty? An egg. Where does it say?
It doesn't. It's only in the picture.
Right, it's only in the picture, right? Humpty Dumpty was an egg. Doesn't say it anywhere. There's no pasuk like that. Doesn't say anywhere that Humpty Dumpty was an egg, right? He had a great fall, right? He doesn't like spring. He had a great fall. What does fall mean? All the king's horses and all the king's men, they couldn't put him together again. He was so upset that fall was over. He was depressed. They couldn't put him back. Right?
That's not what it really meant.
That's for sure what it meant.
It's
It's like an ode to depression about the winter. Right? It's
a seasonal affective disorder.
Right, 100%. Right. So, but everybody knows that Humpty Dumpty was an egg and that he fell off a wall. And right? So like, where is it? No, there's a Torah Sheba'al Peh, right? It doesn't make sense unless you have a Torah Sheba'al Peh. There's a Torah Sheba'al Peh. That Torah Sheba'al Peh, that oral tradition, was never written down in the days of Moshe Rabbeinu. Was never written down in the days of Yehoshua. And you went from the days of Moshe Rabbeinu to Yehoshua to the days of the Shoftim to the Beis Hamikdash, David HaMelech and Shlomo HaMelech, and then 410 years of the existence of the first Beis Hamikdash, 70 years of Babylonian exile, to another 420 years of the second Beis Hamikdash, which was destroyed in the year 70 CE. You're talking about 1,500 years, plus minus, right, of Torah being taught and learned without any writing down of the oral tradition. When does it begin to get written down? So around the year 200 CE, Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi is one of the is the Gadol Hadar in his generation. He is the last, more or less, of the age of what we refer to as Tanaim, which today we know as rabbis of the Mishnah. This is an era of Talmidei Chachamim that spans since before the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, right? Like Hillel and Shammai, they lived during the time of the Beis Hamikdash. How do you know that Hillel lived in the time of the Beis Hamikdash? He's famous for a particular sandwich. No, you know that becoming there, right? The Kurach, right? So Cain also Hillel was much Beis Hamikdash Hayakayim, right? Right? Yeah, right. Yeah. He's famous for a particular sandwich, right? This is what Hillel would do when the Beis Hamikdash was around, right? He would have Pesach, matzah, and maror together, right? By the way, Pesach, matzah, and maror. Matzah today, like the thin cracker stuff. So for sure, in the days of the Beis Hamikdash, it was like the Sephardi matzah. It was like thicker and floppier and like not cracker-esque. You're talking about lafa plus shawarma plus charif, right? That's Pesach, matzah, maror, right? That's it's good. It's for sure better. It is for sure better.
Sounds delicious.
Right? Pesach, matzah, and maror. Your dessert was like a little mini lafa. That was what you had at the end of the meal, right? That's what Hillel would have. He would be korech. He would put together the Pesach, the matzah, and maror. Right? The current Pesach meant that they were still Beis Hamikdash. Right? That's at least according to most opinions. Arguably, they were still bringing korban Pesach from time to time, even after the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. But that's a show for another day. But Hillel. Right, but we say Bizman Beis Hamikdash Hayakayim. This is what Hillel did when there was a Beis Hamikdash. Right, so Hillel was before the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Tarfon, right, lost. That's after the Churban Abayis. Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, all of them are after the destruction of the second Beis Hamikdash. Rabbi Yehuda Anasi collects all of the notes. There was no curriculum; that was never written down. He collects all of the notes from all of the from all of the yeshivas, puts them together into something called Mishnah. Right? That's the Mishnah. That's the Mishnah that was written down by Rabbi Yehuda Anasi. It is fairly small. I mean, this is with commentary here, but without commentary, you're talking about like that. That's Rabbi Yehuda Anasi, right? Wrote down Shisha Sidrei Mishnah. Each one of them, well, here's only 5 of them, but there's another one here floating around somewhere, right? He has Seder Taros. It's not a tremendous amount of text. I mean, it's words. It's a lot of them, but like it is not insurmountable. A person could read through this and have all the basics of Torah Sheba'al Peh like that, right? It doesn't take a long time to read through Mishnayos. It's not hard. To understand Mishnayos takes time, right? And that's why in all of the yeshivas, after Rabbi Yehuda Anasi creates this curriculum, this becomes curriculum, right? It used to be like this is what we have from the Rambam and from Rabbi Shira going that the way that they used to teach Torah was every Talmid Chacham would have his own yeshiva. He would sit down with a Sefer Torah, and he would like teach how in whatever order he wanted, in however he wanted, knowing all of the dinim of all of the mitzvahs. There's 630 mitzvahs. You go in whatever order you like, whatever curriculum you like. Everybody would do as they wished, right? And they had traditions of how they did this. Comes along Rabbi Yehuda Anasi and says, I'm going to create a curriculum for the Jewish people that's going to save Torah. Because if not for this, Torah is going to be lost. At this point in time, there's the Roman occupation of Judea, and they are killing everyone, right? Like, Talmidei Chachamim aren't surviving long enough to sit down with a Sefer Torah and a group of students and teach everybody stuff. So we're losing out Torah. What are we going to do? We're losing our Torah. No problem. Let's write it all down. Shisha Sidrei Mishnah. That's called the Mishnah. The Mishnah becomes the basic curriculum that becomes the basis for the Talmud. The Talmud is written in 2 locations. Right? There's the Talmud Bavli, which is written in Bavel, and the Talmud Yerushalmi, which is written in not Yerushalayim. Right? It's not written in Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim is destroyed at this point in time. No Jews are even allowed there to a large extent. Most of the Jewish community lives around the Galil, like the Galilee area. They called the Talmud Yerushalmi because paying homage to Yerushalayim. But this was the Israeli Talmud versus the Babylonian Talmud. And the Israeli Talmud was smaller, one because it had fewer yeshivas. There were fewer Talmidei Chachamim that were still alive in Eretz Yisrael, and also because it lasted a shorter period of time. By the late 300s, there's like no yeshivas left in Eretz Yisrael. The Talmud Bavli is written, concluded, finished by like the mid 400s-ish. So there's like another 80 to 100 years of Talmud Yerushalmi, of Talmud Bavli. And that becomes the Shas. That's Shisha Sidrei Mishnah expanded into all the discussions of everything. Those discussions of the Talmud Bavli and Talmud Yerushalmi become the basis of Torah Sheba'al Peh for the next 500 years. So, simple to break this down into from the year 1 to the year 200 is rabbis of the Mishnah. From the year 200 to about 500 is rabbis of the Gemara. From the year 500 to the year 1000 of the Gaonim. This is like the black hole of Jewish history. We know a lot about it, but like this 500 years of like just rabbis living and communities in Babylon, without a tremendous output, like literary output. Basically, what the Gaonim did for about 500 years was they learned Talmud, they taught Talmud, they amended the text of the Talmud so that we have it accurate. They got all the versions down. And for 500 years, Jews lived, fairly well in Babylon. Like things were good in Babylon for about 500 years. For a lot of reasons, economic, historical, anti-Semitism, etc., the Jewish diaspora from Babylon expands. And you end up with like a number of major Jewish communities. The two most important, most prominent in the development of halacha are the Jews of Ashkenaz and the Jews of Sfard. Right? That's Ashkenazim and Sfardim. Pretty much generation 1 of Ashkenazim and Sfardim is you have Rashi, who is in France, and the Rif, who is in Morocco. Not quite Spain yet, right? But North Africa, Spain is more or less the same halachic community. Because from the Straits of Gibraltar, it's like a hop, skip, and a jump from North Africa into Spain. Maybe next week we'll do this all on a map. We'll go through the globe, the development and dispersion of halacha. But more or less from about the year 1000 to about the mid 200s, 1200s, like beginning of the 1300s, there is an explosion of Torah in Ashkenaz. Talking about Rashi and Tosfos and the schools of the Balei Tosfos, the Rabbeinu Tam and the Rashbam and the Ri. This is all Chachmei Ashkenaz. In Spain, at the same time, you have the Rambam, and then afterwards the Ramban and the Ritva and the Ran. So there's like a tremendous amount that's going on in both communities. And they develop to a certain extent somewhat independently of each other. Like, for example, Rashi and the Rambam didn't know about each other. Well, arguably the Rambam knew about Rashi. He was like a couple decades later. It's questionable whether he saw anything that Rashi wrote, which is just an astounding thing to think about, right? That like the Rambam didn't have Rashi. There's like a guy in Bar Ilan apparently that's like doing his PhD thesis, trying to prove that the Rambam, towards the end of his life, did have access to Rashi. Like he got a copy of Rashi's commentary on the Talmud, but it doesn't. He never quotes Rashi. Like doesn't show up, which is like an astounding, fascinating thing to say. Like the Rambam didn't learn Chumash Rashi. He didn't learn the Gemara with Rashi. He had traditions from the Rif, and he had traditions from his father, right? And from the Rimigash. Like he didn't have Rashi, which amazing, right? Now, in the mid-1300s, this is after like 3-4 rounds of crusades, more or less. There's Rheinfleisch massacres, which washed through Germany, that basically end the era of Talmud Chachamim in Germany. One of the Gedolim of Germany at the time is, of Ashkenaz at the time in general, right? Ashkenaz literally translates to Germany, although borders shift a lot. Was the Rosh, Rabbeinu Asher. Rabbeinu Asher flees from Germany, ends up in Spain, because Spain is a good place for Jews to be when Germany is a bad place for Jews to be. He ends up in Spain, and he needs a job. So he speaks to the Gadol Hadar in Spain at the time, who's the Rashba, student of the Ramban, and he says to him, "I need a job." The Rashba is in Barcelona, and he gets a job for the Rosh in Toledo. The Rosh comes together with his son, whose name is Rabbeinu Yaakov ben Asher. He's about 16 years old at the time. He grew up learning from his father for 16 years. He knows all the Ashkenazi traditions. He shows up in Spain. His father, the Rosh, has a very hard time with the Spanish Jews. He's an old school Ashkenazi, old traditions of the Ashkenazim, and he shows up in Spain and like they're all doing Sephardi things. It's like, what's going on here? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm a gefilte fish Jew. Like, what's going on with like this Jachnun and Malawach? Like, I don't know what this stuff is about, right? So, I mean, and he's fighting with them on like every detail because they hold of the Rambam and they hold of the Rif. And he's like, but Rabbeinu Tam says, and they're like, well, we don't care what Rabbeinu Tam says. We're Sephardim. But his son, and of course, the Rosh writes extensively. At the back of the Gemara, you see the Hilchos HaRosh has got extensive commentaries, bringing down the traditions of the Ashkenazi poskim on the Gemara. His son, the Tur, later becomes the Tur, is the first work that amalgamates, puts together both the works of the Ashkenazim and Sephardim into one book. It is the first unified book of Jewish law since the Gemara, which makes it exceedingly popular. It becomes the basis of all Jewish law today. And the major commentaries on the Tur become the basis of both the Shulchan Aruch for Sephardim and the Ramah for Ashkenazim, because the Tur contained within it both. So whenever you learn the Tur, inside of the Tur, what you will find are the opinions of Ashkenazim, the Rosh, Rashi, Rabbeinu Tam, the Ri. And you will also find the opinions of the Rif and the Rambam and the Ramban and the Rashba, because he's bringing all of this together. So this is written in Spain, late 1300s, early 1400s. The Tur becomes the basis of everything. Now, the two major commentaries on the Tur that became the basis of halacha, one of them is the Beis Yosef. Who is the Beis Yosef? Beis Yosef is a generation and a half later. His name is Rabbi Yosef Karo. He was 4 years old 4 or 5 years old in 1492 when Jews were kicked out of Spain. He ends up making his way eventually to Tzfat, to Eretz Yisrael. He becomes the author of the Shulchan Aruch. That's Rabbi Yosef Karo. At the same time, more or less the same generation, is the Darkei Moshe. The Darkei Moshe is Rav Moshe Isserles, who is the Ramah, who is the Ashkenazi rendition of the Shulchan Aruch. He's in Krakow, early 1500s. Same generation, major commentary on the Tur. The Tur becomes the major work of Jewish law. I was also, there was one year that 2 years, 1 year that Elise and I went to the Slivka Center in Yale for Yom Naraim. I was the chazan for Yom Naraim when I was in our first year married. Yeah, first year married, we went to Yale for Yom Naraim. They needed a chazan there for Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. So in the Yale library, they have, I think, a first edition printing of the Tur, which is like amazing to see. Wow. Like this is like 600 plus years old, a first edition of the Tur. Which is phenomenal. Meaning, you're talking about one of the first books of Jewish law that was ever printed on a printing press. That's the Tur. So when you learn the Tur, what you're doing is touching the pulse of Jewish life and Jewish law and Jewish legacy and like Jewish kitchens in a very real way for thousands of years, because this is the Mishnah to the Gemara to the Rishonim to Halacha. That's what we're doing. And in order to understand all of the questions that we're talking about transfer of flavor and taste and all the rest of it, what we are going to look at is the Tur and Shulchan Aruch, which we'll get to in a bit, in Yoredea and Siman Tzadiches. Before we can take a look at this, we should just explain what Yoredea is. Because we mentioned that the Tur is technically called Arba Turim, right? If you take a look at the front, say Arba Turim, the complete 4 rows. What are these 4 rows? So it is patented after the pasuk in Chumash that talks about the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol, right? Which does not mean the oldest Kohen, right? The Kohen Gadol, right? The Kohen Gadol in the Beis HaMikdash had a 12-stoned breastplate that was in 4 rows, right? There were 4 rows. So he calls this work the arbiturim, the 4 rows. What are these 4 rows? So they are, firstly, in order, usually. The arbiturim are Arachaim. Arachaim means day-to-day life. Day-to-day life is brachos and tzitzis and tefillin and davening and Shabbos and Yom Tov and Pesach and Sukkot, right? The calendar year, right? Day-to-day life, calendar year. What happens in an annual cycle of Jewish existence? That's called Arachaim. Then you have Yeridea. Yeridea is ritual law. Ritual law meaning keeping kosher, meat, milk, treif, nevela, tmeah, right? All of those isurim. Also, halachas of melicha, of salting animals. Also, the halachas of writing a sefer Torah. Ritual law, right? The halachas of avelos, mourning, right? All of this is in the halachas of learning Torah, right? These all ritual, kibbut avayim, questions of ritual law. Then you have Kosher Mishpat and Even Ezer. Kosher Mishpat is litigation, jurisprudence. Borrowing, lending, selling, damaging, litigation, tort, all the things that you take somebody to court over, right? Interpersonal relationships. And then you have Even Ezer, which is family law, marriage, divorce, raising children, all of those questions. That's Even Ezer. Strictly speaking, when people learn smicha, so in order to live as a Jew, you need familiarity to a large extent with Arachaim. You need to know, these are things that like everybody practices in their homes in general, right? You need to know, you need to have tefillin, you need to have mezuzah, right? Well, but putting up a mezuzah, and writing the mezuzah, so that'll be in Yeridea. But tefillin and tzitzis, you need to have, everybody has to have all the time, right? That's everyday questions. Shabbos, right? That's every week question. Pesach, every year question. Everybody needs to deal with this. Yeridea, or at least being able to determine and discern areas of Yeridea, was usually left to rabbis. So everybody knew the basics of Yeridea, but how do you paskin on questions in Yeridea? So that is what the basis of smicha is. Smicha today we refer to as yore, right? You are familiar with Yeridea, you can render a decision in Yeridea. And then there's a higher level of smicha called yadin, which is being able to issue judgments, rulings in a beis din. And that would be questions of litigation and family law. That's Yeridea. That's beyond Yeridea. That is Kosher Mishpat and Even Ezer. So the basic smicha curriculum for rabbis is a lot of this book, right? Is Yeridea. But this is things that everybody needs to be familiar with, because if you want to understand what it means to be a Jew, so you need to understand how your kitchen works, right? You need to be able to cook. You need to be able to eat. You need to be able to know like what we're doing here. So we're going to take a look inside of Hilchos Tarovis, Siman Tzadi Ches, the laws of Tarovis. Literally Tarovis or Taruvis, depending on your vernacular and pronunciation. What does Taruvis mean? What does it mean? Le'arev, eruv. So all the same words. Erev. What does erev mean?
Separation.
No, the opposite.
Bonding, a mixture.
Mixtures, right?
Right.
Right. La'arov is to combine. So some of the Even Ezer points out that when the Chumash says Vayhi Erev, Vayhi Boker, Erev means the mixture of light and darkness. Right? Erev means dusk, when light and dark are mixing. An Eruv is where you put up a boundary that will connect, it'll join different domains. That's an Eruv. And a Taroves is a mixture of things, right? Mixture of things. Could be flavors, could be foods, it could be kosher things, it could be not kosher things, but mixtures. It means stuff that wasn't supposed to happen like this, right? We were supposed to know that this is this thing and this is that thing, but then it turned out that it's not. More things are there than we planned on having there. So that is called tarovis, mixtures of stuff. So at the beginning of each siman literally translates to chapter. Siman is a chapter. Convention inside of halachic works is the word siman means chapter, and then each paragraph is called a seif, right? A seif is a subparagraph, right? So the tour begins as follows: Hilchos Tarovis, you'll see at the top. Siman Tzadiches is 98, chapter 98. It says Pirte Rimze Dinim Hamavuarim Bazeh Siman, and this is the cheat notes of what we're going to be talking about inside of this chapter. Aleph, you see underneath where it says Aleph, says the Torah. This is what we're talking about. Yeah, the first thing we're going to talk about is Tarovis Ha'isur, the mixtures of forbidden things, meaning mixing in forbidden things. Shimatirim b'ti'imas goy, that you can then permit the eating of through having a non-Jew taste it. Bless you. Im tzarich sheyeh uman, if he needs to be an expert. V'im tzarich sheyeh mesiach lefi tumoi, and bless you. And if you need him to not know that you're relying on him. This is an important halacha. We're going to talk about this. Hada samchina te'imas goy, and that which we are going to rely on, the tasting of a non-Jew. Imhu b'de'ika shishim dafka, is that where there is 60 against it? Filu b'deleka shishim, or even if where there isn't 60 against it. So what this little cheat note said here is like a lot of different things. In order to understand this, what we need to understand is that there are different ways of mixing things in general. Everything that I am about to say here is subject to multiple levels of debate. So we're going to give as broad an introduction as possible. Question for you is as follows. If I have one piece of kosher meat, right? I have a kosher brisket. How did I get a kosher brisket? Bricks Brothers, right? I have a kosher brisket because somebody shechted a behema tahora and then checked its lungs to make sure that it is not a treifa, right? So I have a behema tahora that is not an avela, that is not a treifa. So this animal is now kosher, right? And then I salted it, which we haven't got into yet, but salted it, removed the blood. Excellent. Now I have a kosher brisket. Excellent. Next to it, I have a non-kosher brisket. Let's assume that it came from a cow, so that this is indistinguishable. But this cow was either a nevela, which means it wasn't shechted. Somebody shot it, right? Common bolt through the head, right? Electrocuted, whatever else happened to this thing. Or it was a treifa, meaning it was shechted and then, right, it had some kind of lesions in its lungs, right? It wasn't a shera, it was a treifa. It was going to die. So that animal is not kosher for eating. But I have two briskets. One that I know is kosher and one that I know is not kosher. It's treifa. And coming out from the slaughterhouse, I have these two pieces of meat. Then I got the bags mixed up. Now I have the bags mixed up. I don't know which is which. I have no way of determining which is which. No way. Am I allowed to eat one of them?
No.
Only you can determine.
Can't determine.
No, if it's 2 out of 3, you can eat all of them.
Well, hold on. We'll get there.
I know,
Hold on.
I know this one.
Hold on. We're going to get there.
If most of them are kosher, then it's fine.
So we'll get there in a moment.
Yeah.
We'll get there in a moment. But I have two.
Equal size pieces.
They're exactly equal size. They're both briskets, right? They're both briskets. Well,
I kind of had, I know this one.
No, I get what you're talking about, but I figured 2 equal size pieces.
Let's say-
You guys are thinking too much.
let's say, by the way, and let's say that both of them got salted. There's no way of determining at all the difference between them. One is kosher, one is treif, right? Can you eat one of them?
No.
No. Why not?
You don't know. There's so much doubt.
Because this is what is called a suffix de'oraisa. This is a doubt in a question of biblical law. I don't know if this is kosher or if this is treif. I don't know. It's a 50-50. We say a suffix de'oraisa l'chumra. I don't know if this is kosher. I don't know if this is treif. Am I allowed to eat it? No, because it's a question of doubt in biblical law. I'm not allowed to be lenient. I have to be strict about this, right? Suffix de'oraisa l'chumra. That's the halacha. Suffix de'oraisa is l'chumra. It's a doubt. I don't know. I don't know if this is kosher. I don't know if this is treif. I don't know. I have no way of resolving this doubt. It's one or the other. It's one or the other. Don't know. 50-50. Literally 50-50. Now, that's not the only kind of doubt that we have in the world. Let's imagine that I have 99 kosher briskets and one non-kosher brisket. Right? 99 kosher, one not kosher. Can I eat one of them?
Yes.
But it's a suffix.
Unless you mix them all together.
There's going to be a Hebrew phrase that you say, and that makes it okay.
No, it's a suffix. Is this the same level of doubt? It's very clearly not the same level of doubt. Is it doubt? Is there doubt involved here? Yeah. It's not 50-50 anymore.
But it's the same level of doubt for that one piece that you take.
Well, no, that one piece that I'm taking,
Because that could be.
it could be. But is that a 50-50?
No.
No. It's 99 to 100, right? 99 out of 100 is going to be kosher, right? So the Torah tells us that in questions of doubt, when it comes to ritual law, when it comes to questions of biblical ritual law, we say suffix de'oraisa l'chumra, but that is only true if it is a real bona fide 50-50 doubt. If it's not a bona fide 50-50 doubt, so we have other ways of resolving those doubts. For example, we have a principle, which the Torah tells us, achri rabim lahatos, is in questions of doubt, one can rule by the majority. So if I have 99 pieces of kosher meat and one piece of treif meat, and I cannot discern which is which, says the Torah, I'm entitled to follow the majority. Now, what's called the majority? At what point in time is something called a majority? 51-49. That's a majority, right? That's a rove. Now, it's not a very high rove. It's not a great majority, but it is a majority. And the Rishonim debate exactly on a biblical level where you can draw the line with regards to majority. But strictly speaking, on a biblical level, if I have two pieces of kosher meat and one piece of non-kosher meat, and I cannot determine which is which, right? And I can't determine any of this. 3 pieces of brisket. Three briskets. 2 of them I know came from a kosher animal. 1 I know came from a non-kosher animal. When it comes to that question, so can I eat this piece of brisket? I pick one. Can I eat that one? So the halacha is, mid'oraisa on a biblical level, yes, I can eat that one. I can absolutely eat that one. Now, there's a 5-way machlokus in the Rishonim, what to do about the rest of them. And that's...
So I ask, what do you do with the 100th meat?
Well, so...
When you've counted out 99 of them,
right?
And you're like, well, I guess that's the non-kosher one,
right? So
why would you think that you'd say that? I would think either or. If you can eat one of them, then you can eat any of them.
No,
right?
Yeah, but it's more like when you get to the 100th, you come to the realization that you must have either eaten the non-kosher one, or that's the non-kosher one.
But it's
right?
Irrelevant if it's operating around non-kosher.
But each time you eat one, you're closing the ratio
Yeah,
as
but
well.
in
You
your
could also call it a
scenario,
loss.
could
It's
you
like
take a
I've
third
either
of each state?
made
Oh,
a
so we'll get
mistake,
there.
Or
So-
there's a chance that
What's
seventh
the,
one
what's
is
the,
not
five, what's the
kosher one.
five-way machloek?
So let's go through each of the options. Yeah, I'm saying let's go through the options, right? To eat the first one, that's a din d'oraisa acharav natas. You can do that, right? You can for sure eat the first one. About the second one, so
If it
can
was
That's a
51,
50-50
49,
chance.
Are you constantly taking a new ratio?
so that's part of the discussion, right? So yeah, there's three briskets, right? I'm gonna eat
Oh,
the first one. I'm gonna eat because there's
Chances are,
right? There's a 66% chance that what I'm eating here is kosher. But now I have two left, right? I have two left. So how do you? I mean, there are some Rishonim that say at this point in time, no, you can't eat this.
That
50,
seems like
right.
they're the same. They're the original scenario.
Right. Meaning, because I'm assuming that if I ate one already, the one that I ate is kosher. So what's left is one kosher one and one treif one.
If you flip a coin heads or tails and you get heads 10 times in a row, it's still 50% chance.
Right.
I don't think statistically.
Correct. Statistically, that's not true.
what I'm saying, it's 50.
Right, but it is at what point in time do you reevaluate the system? Right?
it's the flipping the coin is not the same thing.
So-
Flipping the coin-
That's the
each
model
instance-
orthodoxy.
each
Andrew
instance
make
of
a
flipping the
challenge,
coin
mix
has
them
two
all
Makes-
into option, and then,
When you
Ah,
get
so
to
maybe
eight out of
we'll get there.
That's not two options.
So
But then the next round, you
And then I know them
It's
no.
two. It's not
Not too much.
So we're gonna get labor dick here. So hold up. So the first one I'm eating because there's 2 out of 3 that it's kosher. What's gonna allow me to eat the second one? Is one of two possibilities, right? Either I've eaten the treif. There's no more treif, right? Maybe I've eaten the treif. Maybe there's no treif and both of these are kosher. That's one option. Or alternatively, I'm looking at the system as still 2 out of 3, right? So I can still eat another one. But then can I eat the third one?
I was saying no.
No, because then you know for sure that you've eaten.
Because then when you get to the last
no more-
one, you
there's
have
no
a
more doubt.
you have the same, you have a gamble, but the gamble is different.
No,
It's
you're-
either I've eaten the non-kosher one, and
Right.
I have to accept my loss and say that I've eaten a non-kosher one, so that one I was supposed to get rid of. Or there's a high chance, 50-50, that this last one is the not kosher one.
Right. Well, no. What are the chances that the last one is kosher?
At which point?
When there's only one left.
You don't want to remove the doubt.
Still the one of three.
Right. No. That this last one is
It didn't
kosher.
become kosher by me eating the other
No.
biscuits.
But you
This-
still
when I have
doubt.
one
You don't wanna
left-
get rid of the doubt.
Right. When
You
I
don't
have
wanna get rid of the
We
doubt.
already know that you constantly reevaluate the situation.
always. We'll get there. I mean, but the first one I've eaten because it's a 50 because it's 2 out of 3. The second one is still 2 out of 3, right? By the time I'm eating the third brisket, right? By the time I'm eating the third brisket, yeah, what am I saying? Is that
I'm definitely eating treif.
no? Is that I'm 2 out of 3? I'm eating kosher.
What? Oh.
2 out of 3. This is kosher,
Each one's two. It's the same thing each time.
right?
But then you definitely ate treif.
Then I definitely did eat treif, right?
Why would you put yourself in the situation where you definitely, without a doubt, ate treif?
Again, this is all on the level of deraisa. Derabanan, we don't do this, right? With derabanan, we don't do this. But by the time you're eating the third one, right? By the time you're eating the third one, there's a 2 out of 3 chance that this third one is kosher.
Did they halachically change the, I'm trying to find the right word, did they actually now change to being kosher because?
Ah,
of something?
So here's where the question becomes interesting: is can you eat all 3 at the same time? Right?
You make a sandwich.
Can you eat all 3 at the same time?
No.
So some of the Rishonim suggest absolutely yes.
That's how you make it all.
That's the best part.
You take 99 briskets, combine them with the non-kosher ones, and suddenly it's
Is the ORB vote by this? Because all they have to do is get 49% of cheaper meat.
Right.
You
So-
49% is
I
so
don't
much
think
better.
you
It's
can do
like-
it. I don't think you can do it as intention.
You can't do any of this intentionally. That's called mevatel. So you came home from the slaughterhouse and you just don't know, right? Can you eat all three of them together? So some of the Rishonim even suggest yes. Why? Because Achrei Rabim Lahatos means this non-kosher one is now kosher. That's the halacha. The Torah has rendered this kosher. Meaning, 2 out of 3 is kosher. Therefore, this system is kosher. Enjoy.
I have a question.
Yeah.
If a non-Jew does it on purpose, can Jews eat it?
Maybe.
All right.
Side business.
Restaurant loophole.
This is why all the people in the kitchen are not Jewish.
So no, because they're doing it for Jews, which is a separate question. Gentlemen, what ends up here, and this is important to understand.
It's so badly.
This is kind of like, trace meat that falls into honey and transforms.
We'll get
It's
there.
actually transforming.
Honey
So-
came up. Honey
Yeah,
came
we'll
up
get
in
to
that,
honey.
the
We'll
thing.
get to honey a little later. Honey is a separate deal. We're just talking principles here. This is called the principle of right. It's okay.
2 weeks, I'm out of here.
I could, but you're going to move here soon. So no. Who knows? He knows. Grandkids. So what are you going to do? That's yeah, sure. Yeah, feel free. Bring a couple of LaCroix. That's the plural of LaCroix. So the din is on a level of de'araisa. Again, each of these is a machlokes, but on a level of de'araisa, the other fridge, see where the wine bottles are over there. Wine bottles on the counter. Look. You're looking bottom under the counter.
Older, warmer.
On the right.
On the right. There we go. Grab whatever you want. So
Ooh, a drink fridge. That's a good idea for me.
there you go. Okay. So now that right now that we've established that there is a principle in halacha called batel barov, that something becomes nullified in the majority. It's batel barov, at least on a level of deraisa, on a biblical level. We have a number of questions to ask and to ascertain. And this is going to be the launching point for this whole discussion, which we're not going to get into too many details yet, but I just want to give categories here. There is a category called batel barov where something can become nullified in a majority. You have a majority against a minority, the majority rules, right? I can treat this in some way, shape, manner, or form as the majority. Amen. So you have a majority. Now, a number of things to work through here is that majority presumably is only when I cannot identify what the forbidden thing is, obviously. If I can identify it, if it still maintains and retains its identity, then I take it out and don't eat that, right? So if something is still identifiable, it breaks the laws of bittul. It cannot be nullified. It's identifiable. You can't assume that it's nullified because it isn't. Practically, fundamentally speaking, it is not nullified. You can see it. It's there.
This is
And
only
the
by
lookalike
mistake.
steak.
Right. This is all. Say what?
The lookalike brisket qualifies for this? For this?
Yeah. Meaning you can't identify it. It is impossible to identify.
Same as a thing that dissipates in the hot challenge.
So now what we're going
The
to
mixing.
now we have to define different ways of mixing things, because there is a mixture which is what the halacha refers to as yavish beyavish, dry with dry, right? This is 2 pieces of brisket and a third piece of brisket, and one of them is treif, right? That mixture is a question of yavish beyavish, right? My question is, I can't identify which is which,
But they're not.
right? But they're not.
Separated.
But meaning I can pick up each one, right? I can wrap up each one and mail it to a friend, right? I could do that. I can identify each item. I just can't identify which item is kosher and which item is treif. That's what's called yavish beyavish. And then you have what's called lach balach, which is liquids inside of liquids. So, for example, kosher milk comes from a kosher animal, right? Like a cow. The din is that yotze min hatame is tame. Something that comes from a tame animal is tame. So if it comes from a cow is tame or tahar? Tahar. Cow is tahar. So yotze min hatahar is tahar. It came from a kosher animal, meaning a tahara. You milk the cow, you now have milk. That milk is coming from a kosher animal, it's kosher, right? You have milk that came from a pig. That is not kosher, right? It's not kosher. If I have some pig milk mixed in with my cow's milk, is my problem that I cannot discern which is which? I can't separate it at all, right? I can't separate this thing whatsoever. This is what's called lach balach min b'minai, which means liquid inside of liquid of the same variety, the same time.
Right.
This is different, for example, if I have a vat of milk and then somebody drops in a drop of blood. Blood is not the same thing as milk, right? That is called min b'she'enoi minoi. That's one variety in something that is not the same variety whatsoever. Now, theoretically, is there a way of discerning whether or not there is pig milk in my cow milk? A lab test. Today you could do a lab test in theory. But 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, no ways much. There would be two ways of determining.
Of each of them.
Yeah, there would be two ways of determining. One way of determining would be looking at it, right? If you looked at it and it looked pink, right?
Strawberry milk.
Right?
Tastes a little fresher, maybe.
Right? Taste a little it's fortified with iron, yes. The a little bit pinkish color in your milk. So you know, you had somebody that had some blood they were getting ready to throw out and they tripped, right? And you don't know, did it splash into the bucket of milk or did it not? If you looked at it and it looks pink, well, then yes. Is there another way of determining? You could taste. I mean, but could you taste it? No. But in theory, if a non-Jew were to taste it and be like, this tastes a little bit like blood, then you would know that there was blood in it, right? Which means that when it comes to a question of the same thing, milk in milk, non-kosher milk into kosher milk, right? And there's no way of determining.
I don't know. Isn't there? I mean, I don't know what milk from a pig would taste like, but milk from a goat tastes different than milk from a cow.
That's true.
You would taste something different.
Maybe.
May not be able to
Arguably.
identify the specific
Yeah.
You have to be like an expert at like.
Right.
tasting
Meaning if you're like a super duper expert,
milk,
in theory, theoretically, maybe.
Yeah, 2%,
Right?
1%. You have to tell the difference between 1% cow milk and goat milk, or skim cow milk and goat milk.
Right. So
Skim milk is just water lying without being milk.
Correct. So in theory,
Skim milk is
if
water
you
lying
knew-
without being milk.
if you knew that the animal was treif, you could not drink milk from it. Right? Means when you milk a cow, so how can you drink that milk? You don't know if the animal is treif.
Right, and you said to
It's
find
still alive.
you said to find the rabbi that can identify
still
if it's treif.
Still alive,
It's
right?
alive.
But who says it's not gonna, drop dead within a year? Did you check its lungs?
Yeah, you said
But
those
is
rabbis
that-
were foreign few that you
They were
get
dead
into a
already. They were
village.
dead.
So how are people getting milk from
No,
the
no,
cow
but the cow's
without
still
killing
alive.
it?
Right.
Cow's alive.
I'm saying, and there were like 4 or
No,
5
nobody,
across the
nobody
road.
can
those are
determine.
dead-
Nobody
They said
can.
there were some like
Yeah,
Those are
no,
dead
only
cows.
once
Those are
it's
dead
dead.
cows.
Once the cow is dead, you have experts that can
Oh, I
determine.
thought there were experts that can see like
No.
should we kill it or should we not?
No. That's a- So, so gentlemen, this is important to understand. This is a halacha of Rov, majority. The majority of cows are not treifas, are not going to die within a year. That is a statistical truth. The majority of cows aren't going to die within a year. And therefore,
You can rely on that.
if you milk a
What if it's
cow,
cow hospital? You can't have a cow hospital.
so if you milk a cow, you can assume that the milk that has come out from that cow is kosher. If you,
Drinking milk is a scenario where we're just combining all the briskets.
right. Well, because,
Drinking milk.
Every cow-
Is that the triple brisket cutting through all?
yes.
But even so, why if the cow's gonna die within a year?
That's crazy.
You're not eating it, you're milking it, right?
Because the halacha is a yotzim min atame is tame. If it, something that you cannot eat produces something, you can't drink that.
So if you know a cow's sick, you can't drink its milk.
Correct. If you know that a cow,
If
meaning you,
there's 10 cows and one is sick and it's all combined together, all the milk you can have.
well, so that's an interesting question, right? Meaning, if you know that one of these cows is sick, and then you put all the milk together, so then that's probably called being mevatel isel lechatchila.
You did it on purpose.
A non-Jew did it because it's his farm, and then he sold it to all the Jews.
Right.
He didn't put
So,
an OU on it.
then
If
you're
you put
okay.
an OU on it, it would be problematic.
No, afterwards, if you put an OU on it, it'll probably be okay in that case,
Okay.
but not an okay, an OU.
We don't hold back about here.
So with this being said, do you really need an extra milk?
So we'll get there. We'll get there. That's the question. That's the question about chalav yishal milk, right? Back in the day when you bought milk from your local non-Jew milk farmer dude, right? What's he putting in your milk? You have no idea.
Right.
No idea, right?
That was back in the day.
Right. So Rav Moshe's heter of what we today refer to as chalav stam, just regular government milk, takes into account much of what the Torah and Shulchan Aruch are saying in Tzadches, which we're going to get to in a little bit.
That most milk comes from cows.
And then
It's not just a question of most milk.
Well, the USDA is highly regulated.
Ah, it's because of
They're not corrupt and they never lie to
In this
us.
country, you're not going to be buying a container of milk that has mixed milks not from cows.
Right.
It's just not going to happen.
Not,
Right.
not likely. In which case
So-
you said if it's not likely.
So
But if
we're going to
there's
get there.
other
We're going to
regu-
get there.
If there's other highly regulated foods, then can
Yes.
apply that same logic?
Maybe. Maybe.
You know, like
We're going to get there.
a Buddhist monk-run factory to make soy.
That might be problematic because of avodah zarah, but yeah.
Take out the avodah zarah part.
Alavai. If we could take out the avodah zarah part, it's right.
They're strict. They've got the same stringencies as the USDA. Would you be able to eat that?
In theory, yes. Meaning,
The USDA is a threat
Yeah, you gotta
because
get it on that one.
no one in business is going to want to risk playing around for USDA because they're dying. They
So-
get caught once they're finished. So
We got all
So-
the differences and
so-
wisdom from it all.
so let's take a look at the Torah as follows. The Torah quotes from the Gemara in Chulin. If you take a look, it says Dine Ta'areves will be Tulan, the laws of mixtures, right? Mixed multitudes, right? And different things mixed together, ubi Tulan, and how they are nullified. Says the Torah as follows. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. This is in Seif Aleph. You see where it says under Dine Ta'areves will be Tulan. So Seif Aleph. Amar Rabbi Yochanan says Rabbi Yochanan in Maseches Chulin. Kol isurim shebatorah b'shishim. All forbidden mixtures in the Torah are nullified with 1 to 60, with 1/60th. Now, where that comes from, not for now, but hold on to that number as you are familiar with. Amar Rava. Rava says to Rabbi Yochanan, they lived in different generations, but this is how the Gemara records it. Amar Rabbanan b'taima. Sometimes the way of determining a bitul, if something has been nullified, is betama, with taste. Amar Rabbanan b'kfela. Sometimes it is with a kfela, means a non-Jewish taster. Amar Rabbanan b'shishim, and sometimes we apply the rule of 1/60th, meaning it's not always true, says Rava, that 60 is the golden ratio. Sometimes we could rely on a Jew taste testing, and sometimes you could rely on a non-Jew taste testing. So what are all of these possibilities? Says the Tur as follows. Min b'she'eno minoi dehetera. Let's get the terminology here. Min, one substance, b'she'eno minoi, in an unlike substance, dehetera, of things that are permissible, b'taima, could be determined with taste. Kagon, for example, truma. If you have truma, what is truma? Truma is the tithe that is given to the kohen. Only a kohen is allowed to eat truma. So either 40th or 50th or a 60th of your total grain, total produce, is given to the kohen, right? Something between 1% and 2%, you give to the kohen. That's what's given to the kohen, right? Or 2 or 3%, right? Let's say you have a little bit of truma that got mixed into chulin, that got mixed into regular food. And we don't apply these halachas today because all of our kohanim today are ritually impure. You can only eat truma if you are tahar. But in the days of the Gemara, they still had kohanim that were eating truma. You have a kohen that is eating truma, that a little bit of truma, let's say, for example, you have truma wine that fell into oil of chulin. Every Jew can use this oil. Only the kohen can drink the wine. So you say to the kohen, hey buddy, do me a favor. Taste this oil over here. Does that taste like wine? Does that have any wine flavor to it? He goes, yeah, that tastes like wine. Is the wine then batel? Has it been nullified? No. Why? What do you mean it hasn't been nullified?
You can taste it.
Taste it. You can taste it. It's clearly not batel. It hasn't been nullified. It's there. You can taste it. You can discern it. The flavor of wine is present in the oil. Min b'she'eno min. You can taste that there is wine there. You know that the wine is not available for a regular Jew to drink. Only a kohen is allowed to drink it. So no problem, the kohen can drink it. Tell me, Mr. Kohen, is there wine in this oil? Yes, there's wine in the oil. Well, then you can't. If the kohen says, no, there's no wine in this oil, then
Why can't you use the oil?
then you can use the oil. Then the wine is batel. It has been nullified. Means, batel literally means it is no longer discernible. It has lost its identity. It has dissolved. It's no longer present there. It's no longer present.
But this is specifically by mistake.
Yes. All of this is assuming by mistake. Right? It's a tyrovis.
Because
It's
I've
an
heard
accidental
people try to
nature.
use this argument for intentional.
No, we don't do this
You can't even
intentionally.
tell it's in there anymore. Tiny trace of pig.
Right. So the answer is that if you did it intentionally, that would be aser, because we don't do that lechatchila. But if it happened accidentally, it would be batal. Now it would be batal even if you did it intentionally.
Right.
But we don't make
If
it nullified
you're a
intentionally.
restaurant owner, God forbid, and then you did that,
Right.
you're committing a sin for sure. But
Correct.
The people that you're serving still
Oh, probably
don't
not.
like, so that
Yes.
it's still butter.
Yes, it is still batal. The problem would be, by the way, is we have a principle of, at least theoretically, matzah min esmina v'neir. At a certain point in time, if you put 1 drop of wine into the oil, right? Does the oil taste like wine? 2 drops? 3 drops? At some point in time, you're going to hit a tipping point, right? Where, well, maybe at some point in time, it is going to taste like wine. You are going to discern that flavor. It's going to taste like it.
I don't like
Right.
this example. I think the one and the oil won't mix
Okay,
because they're different densities.
maybe. In theory, by the way, if you could see the wine at the top, you could scoop it out.
Scoop it out, yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's still discernible.
Right. I'm giving that as an example.
Can you remove it on
Theory.
Shabbos still?
Say what?
Can you remove the wine out of, is it rare?
That's a good question. Not for now.
What are you shaking your head at? It's a good question.
Going through Mishnah Arab B'chulin min b'she'en. So min b'she'en min. Says Yatamenu Kohen. Have the Kohen, right? Have the Kohen taste it. He says im ein by tam truma mutter. If it doesn't taste like the truma, then it is allowed. Let's say that you have a mixture of, this is far more common, of a min b'she'en mina de isura. You have something mixed in with something that is unlike it, right? One variety mixed with another variety that is not the same, but it's usher for a Jew to taste. For example, a little bit of milk in your cholent. Some milk fell in the cholent. Says the Tur, Kugoin chalav shenis arif babasa, you have milk that fell into meat. Yitamen kfela. Yitamen kfela goy. You have a non-Jewish chef taste it. Right? You say to him, hey, try the stew. He goes, this tastes buttery, right? You go, okay. If it tastes like milk, then
Do you have to ask, like,
we'll get there. Because what's the problem?
how do you present?
Are you getting a nod from that?
Taste test.
Could that be an issue?
Well, we'll get there, right? But you ask regular non-Jew, can you taste this for me? Tell me what it tastes like. What flavors do you discern there? If it says no, it tastes like it's milky, it's creamy. So then that's for sure awesome. He says, Im omer, turning over the page, Im omer she'ein by tam chalav mutter. If he says it doesn't taste like milk, so then you can eat it. Now, gentlemen, has the Tur mentioned here if there was a drop 60, not 60? What's the determining factor here?
Taste.
Is the taste present? That's all we've said so far. Is the taste present? It's min b'she'enu mino lach b'lach. Liquid inside of liquid. Min b'she'enu mino, one variety inside of another variety, right? Meaning it's not the same thing. Obviously, if it was milk inside of milk, or meat inside of meat, stew inside of stew, you wouldn't be able to taste test it.
I don't like this tasting because you can always add to it to take the taste away before getting someone to try it.
So we'll get there. We'll get there.
That's
I'm saying, but fundamentally speaking,
We'll get there.
fundamentally
Now that's
speaking,
being willful.
says the Tur,
Vacuum.
says the Tur as follows. We're going first principles here, one by one. It says, Kasav harashba, says the Rashba. He says, Ve'ein sorach sheyeh oimen bekach, el afilu stam b'nei adam. Shekol tam she'einu nirgash l'stam b'nei adam einu ta'am. Says the Rashba, a fundamental principle here. You do not need to have an expert taste tester. You don't need a Michelin star chef to taste your stew. Why? Because what is taste? Subjective to
person tasting.
the majority of people. Right? The fact that this dude is a Michelin star chef, taste tested, whatever expert, right?
So then maybe you shouldn't have an omen at all.
So the Rashba says regular dude, because what we're talking about is the taste discernible to a regular person? If it's discernible to a regular person, then there's milk here. If it's only discernible to the Guinness World Record, milk discern taster, that's not called taste. That's a freak show. That's great for the circus. He can taste one drop of milk, right? Why don't you find a guy that's deathly lactose intolerant? Right? Say, taste the stew. Right? If he grabs his EpiPen, you know that it's basa b'challah, right? That's right. You know what I'm saying? Or just a regular Ashkenazi and wait 15 minutes. See if he's lactose intolerant, right? How do you know that? The Rashba says, you don't have to go find an expert taste tester. Find a regular guy, a regular non-Jew. Go knock on the neighbor across the door. Hey, we're making some stew. Do you want to try some of this? Delicious. What does it taste like to you? Tastes like milk. No, then this is now not kosher. Right?
Enjoy.
You win, right? It says because of Oid, and the Rashba writes further, if he is an expert, if he's an expert and he knows that you are relying on him to know if you can eat it or not, he says Neman.
Oh, that is biased.
He's Neman. He's trusted. Why? And this is your boss. He's trusted. Why? Because he doesn't want to no longer be regarded as an expert. An expert taste tester will not lie to you. Why?
His reputation.
His career's on the line. He has something to lose by lying to you. Meaning, if you called up an expert taste tester and you said to him, hey, can you taste this for me? I need to know if this tastes like milk. And he go, doesn't taste like milk at all. And then you tasted it and it tastes like milk. Right? That Yelp review is 1 star. Right? That Yelp review just went down the tubes. You're going to, Karen is calling the manager right now. People are going to put it on the WhatsApp chat. Can anybody recommend a taste tester? You'll be like, don't use Chris. He lied to me. He told me that it didn't taste like milk, and it did. Right? He just lost his parnasa. Says the Rashba, a taste tester that is a professional is not going to lie. It's not going to lie. How could he lie? Because if he lies to you, he's in trouble.
But what about placebo?
What do you mean placebo effect?
What
does this taste
try
like?
something and not know what you're trying, and then someone says, "Do you taste the honey in there?" And you go, "Oh, I do taste the honey in there."
No.
You're not a pro.
Right. You're asking an expert here.
Right, but the person would have said, "I don't
Right,
taste
so
the honey
maybe-
in there," until you asked.
That's why you
So-
can mention.
so-
No, I thought he said you're allowed to.
No.
But
So,
to a person
so he says for a regular person, this is what we're saying. For a regular person, you can't trust him if he knows that you're going to rely on him.
"Oh, I think you could."
But for an expert, you can. That's the difference between an expert and a regular person.
Ah.
So he says, he says, there are those that will be strict so as to say that you are not allowed to rely on a taste test unless you have 2 conditions. You need 1, that he is an expert, and that he doesn't know that you're relying on him. You don't know what you're looking for. You need both. You need it.
Wine test.
Right. Double blind, right? Right. Yeah. Meaning he doesn't know that you're relying on him, and he is an expert. So could be you need both. Says the Rashba, you need both. Then the Turati says v'chein kosov. You see aleph harosh. This is how he quotes his father all the time. Adoni avi harosh. My father, my master, the Rosh. Right. My father, my master, the Rosh, you need to know that he is not, meaning he's an expert, and it needs to be that he doesn't think that you are relying on him. So what we have established so far is that when it comes to being mevatel a item, are they there? Yes, they are there. Is it also for you to drink this mixture? That depends. Is the flavor still present? If the flavor is present, so then it has not been nullified. If the flavor is not present, then it has been nullified, in which case we can apply the principle that you go by the majority. The majority will nullify the minority. And now it does not exist anymore, as far as the halacha is concerned. You have nullified it. And once something is nullified, it no longer exists in this mixture. That is called bittul. So if I have one drop of milk that falls into meat, and the taste is no longer discernible, can I eat that stew? Yes. Fundamentally, says the Torah, if I have a taste tester that can determine with expertise, and he doesn't know that I'm relying on him, both, right? Doesn't know that I'm relying on him, and he's an expert. He's not just a random dude, meaning I know that his expertise, he would be able to determine that there's milk there. So fundamentally speaking, I can rely on him. Now, nobody does this today, and we'll get to why in the Shulchan Aruch next time. But right, so nobody relies on this today. Right. But practically speaking, what we have determined is that bittul works because the Torah tells us that you nullify items, right? You go by the majority, and we'll get to next week examples where the Torah even details how you must nullify some items, right? Practically speaking, certain flavors and certain items are nullified on a level of de'oraisa. And then what we noted is that min b'minai, things that are mixed with the same things, but they have different statuses in halacha. Kosher blood versus non-kosher blood, right? Fish blood versus cow blood. So fish blood is kosher, cow blood is not kosher, but very hard to determine which is which. Well, if they're all mixed together, you can't look at it and see. But one drop of blood in milk, you could determine. So sometimes you could have a Jew taste it if you have a kohen that's allowed to have it. Sometimes you can have a non-Jew taste it, and sometimes you will have 60 against. And we will figure out all of these things, please God, next week. And we'll see you then.